you mentioned there's some sort of basic principles that maybe are applicable, across all these various domains. Can you maybe go into some detail about what those might be? Maybe using, say, FOMO as an example, because that's something that's very prevalent in the NFT space. People, we're on Twitter, hearing about projects. People around us are making millions, and we're like looking, a lot of people say, "Hey, I'm missing out," or if I don't buy this, I'm going to miss out on all the potential gains. What might be the underlying issues there, or the problems?
Yeah, so there's sort of two things here, right? So fundamental principles, we have to understand really what emotions are doing to you. So when the emotional system gets overactive, right, it actually shuts down your ability to think clearly. So one of the biggest problems that people experience is they make mistakes when they're emotional, and then they get pissed off at the mistakes that they make for getting emotional.
Yeah.
And then there's like a whole cascade of additional problems that come with it. It's like, how could I be so dumb? So you lose confidence. I can't believe I effing did that. And so you get angry, right? You become even more anxious that you're going to miss out. I mean, there's just this sort of snowball of problems that come because of sort of the basic misunderstanding that you do not have the ability to control your emotions when they get that big. They're steamrolling you, right? So if you are going to work on your mental game, if you're going to try to improve FOMO, you have to start addressing it when it's small. And it's not even that big of a problem. Like, so for many of you, you actually need to do some work, and we'll get to some ideas of what this means. But the point being that you need to actually start working before you even open up Twitter, before you even open up some of your accounts and look at what's going on. Because if you get emotionally hijacked at that point, it's almost kind of game over at that point, right? The inevitable patterns that have already caught you up in the past are going to happen again, right? We are not random, right? The mistakes we make happen again and again and again and again. They may show up in different forms, right? I think one of the interesting things I've seen, and maybe you experienced this as well, is like, take poker player who then became a trader, became a crypto trader, or, like you involved in NFTs. And it's like, well, yeah, I actually made a lot of progress with my tilt issue, but now it's kind of showing back up again in the exact same form. It's like, well,
Yeah.
like I thought I solved it. Right. So the point is, right, there's a lot of patterning to the way that we react. And if you can study that pattern, right, understand the sort of the escalation that your emotions typically go through, right? So FOMO, when it's bad, right, as you're experiencing it on Twitter and wherever else, what's called that like level 8 through 10, right? Describe what it is like when your emotions are that high, when your FOMO is that high. Describe what it's like, but try to describe the level below that, right? Level, let's say, 3 through 6 or 4 through 6. What's going on at that stage? And then can you even identify the earliest warning signs that you might be susceptible to FOMO today? Maybe for some of you, it's every day you're susceptible to it. But, I think as you get kind of farther and more advanced, both mentally and, kind of in the community, right, there will be some of those earlier warning signs. Like, for example, I had a trading client who he recognized that FOMO began the second that he started thinking about the utility of the money that he was making. So he was thinking about it in terms of just kind of raw P&L percentages, much more of the sort of in-game, within the market kind of based perspective, like that was fine. But as soon as he started thinking about utility, that was his understanding that there's a divergence. And if he didn't act then, the sort of cascade of mistakes were somewhat inevitable. So what are some of the underlying roots of FOMO? I actually think that FOMO is almost as bad of a term as tilt was for poker players.
Okay.
So a little backstory, right? You'll know this. Tilt, when I came into poker, was quite literally like the term used for anything other than playing your best.
Yeah.
You could be drunk. You could be exhausted. You could be distracted on your phone. I mean, it's like, yada, yada. I tilted and I lost a bunch of money.
Yeah.
It's just shorthand for basically getting emotional, doing something stupid and losing. So I think FOMO is getting pretty close to being as bad of a term, because if you actually break down the word fear of missing out, most of the time it's actually has nothing to do with fear. Okay.
Yeah, that's wild.
Fear of missing out You are pissed off if you miss out. You are greedily going after making money without having any idea what the hell you're doing. You are you have no confidence, and if you were to miss out on this, opportunity, what would that say about you? It would say that you don't know anything, you're a piece of shit. Like, it just, so FOMO in its purest form, if it is actually the fear of missing out, then the flaw that is beneath that is this illusion that this is going to be the last opportunity, which on the surface, is not correct, is not real. But in the moment where that thing gets triggered, you believe it's like, oh, I have to get this one now, otherwise, that's it, and that's it. There's not another flaw. There's not another thing that I have seen, and I'm happy to be wrong, that would explain the sort of pure fear of missing out. Everything else has to do with anger, which could be like missing out would be a mistake. Missing out could be a lack of perfection. There's a lot of people that have high expectations of themselves. They have this desire for perfection. They have this desire for maximizing profit in ways that are not really feasible or practical, or they don't realize that people that were able to got just dead lucky, because you can't kind of time tops and bottoms of markets. I was literally just talking about this with my brother-in-law, who's a real estate agent, and in the US, the real estate market is just insane. And he's talking about how sellers are pissed off that they didn't wait a month to make an extra 30K. It's like, it's just insane, right? So the perfection is a huge reason why people don't want to miss out. There's a feeling of injustice, like, oh, how could this person make? They don't know what they're talking about. I'm so much better. So there's a lot. Like, I think if you were going to like really try to solve your FOMO, you got to start to ask these why questions when you experience it, right? Okay, you can feel the impulse. Okay, why is it that I'm feeling that way? What would happen if I were to miss out? Is that okay? Would it feel like I lost? Am I too competitive? Does it feel like a mistake? I mean, just brainstorm around some of the things I just mentioned. And that's the beginning of kind of changing the game for you. Right now, you're no longer getting caught up, swept up in the emotion. You have an ability to kind of take a step back and observe it and separate yourself, so you can actually understand what the hell it is, right? Pick up the rock in your shoe and figure out what the heck it is, because it's gonna end up right back in your shoe until you figure out what it is and can solve it.
Wow, that makes total sense. I mean, I myself am guilty, of throwing around the term FOMO just left, right, and center, because everyone in this space is always talking about it, and it's a sign that there are issues relating to the mental game that are prevalent everywhere, but it's not always the fear of missing out. And I think just hearing you talk through that, I started thinking about some of the times that I've felt FOMO, and I think it has come down to like being a perfectionist, and also that competitive nature, and sort of maybe feeling like if I miss out on a project that all of my friends, or that all of the community, the smart money, quote unquote, is in, and I'm not a part of it, I might feel like dumb, or that people might look like I am lesser of a person or a trader because I decided not to go into this project that went on to moon, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's truly fascinating, I think. And I think that'll resonate with a lot of people. Yeah.